In this do now, you're going to solve each equation with variables on both sides. So my equation on the left, I am going to combine my like terms. I have 4x and 5x that are alike. You always want something on both sides of the equation, so I'm going to leave 4x alone, and I am going to choose to subtract 5x on both sides. 5x cancels. What you have left is negative 4 equal to negative x, and we still have to keep going until x is completely by itself, and we get rid of the negative by dividing negative 1 on both sides. That'll cancel your negative out. That'll cancel the negative out, and you'll have x equal to positive 4. Second question, we're going to distribute 5 into our parentheses. 5 times n is going to give us 5n. 5 times 7 is going to give you a negative 35. Equal to, distribute on the right, 2 times n is going to give you a 2n. 2 times 14 is going to give you positive 28. We then have like terms on opposite sides of our equation again. I am going to choose to bring over my 2n, and it's positive on the opposite side of the equation, so I have to do the inverse. So I'm going to subtract 2n on both sides. 2n cancels. 3n minus 35 is going to equal 28. I am then going to add 35 to both sides. Bring down my 3n and set it equal to that sum. And then lastly, divide 3 on both sides. So n ends up being positive 21. Section 1.3, you're going to learn about literal equations and formulas. So you'll be able to rewrite and use literal equations and formulas. Key vocabulary is a literal equation and formula. A literal equation is an equation with 2 or more variables in it. You can rewrite a literal equation to isolate any of the variables using inverse operations. This is called solving for a variable. When you rewrite literal equations, you may have to divide by a variable or variable expression. In this lesson, assume that the variable or variable expression is not equal to 0. Division by 0 is not defined. And these are examples of literal equations. As you can see, you have 2 or more variables in both of those equations. So your steps to solving for a variable. Step 1, locate the variable you are asked to solve for in the equation. After locating the variable, step 2, you're going to identify the operations on this variable and the order in which they are applied. After identifying the operations, you're then going to use inverse operations to undo operations and to isolate the variable. So our first 2 examples, we're going to solve the first for x. So again, step 1 said locate what you're asked to solve for. We're asked to solve for x. Locate the operation being performed on x, which is addition. And then use your inverse operations. So the inverse of addition is for you to subtract. So we're going to subtract y on both sides of this equation. When we do that, y cancels with y. We're left with x, which is what we want. It's equal to, you had a 15 over there. Now you have a 15 minus y, and that is your final answer. So we'll repeat the same thing for B. We're going to solve for Q. Locate Q is on the left side of the equation. Well, what's happening to Q? Well, Q is being multiplied by P. And remember, the inverse of multiplication is for you to divide. So to get Q by itself, we're going to divide P on both sides. P cancels. Q is going to equal X over P. Final answer. Your turn. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do this one on your own, and then unpause to check your answer. So here we need to solve for T. T is here on the right side of the equation. I'm going to just point to T. Okay. The operation being performed on T is multiplication. 2 is being multiplied by T. So to get T by itself, we're going to divide 2 on both sides. And T is going to equal 5 minus B all over 2. Final answer. Here's another example for you to try on your own. So go ahead and pause the video, see if you can get V by itself, and then unpause to check your answer. This one is tricky. The reason it's tricky is because they want you to solve for V, but V is in the denominator. So how are we going to get M on the other side of the equation? Well, I'll show you. So what we have is D equals M over V. I'm going to draw my line to separate the right and left side of the equation, and then I'm going to start solving. So remember, whatever's in your denominator, you can move it to the right side of the left side of the equation by multiplying it. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to multiply V on both sides. V cancels. On the left, I have V times D is equal to M. Remembering that they want us to solve for V, so we want V by itself. So to do that, I am simply going to divide D on both sides because that's the inverse. D cancels, and V is going to equal M divided by D. Definition. Formula. Formula is an equation that states a rule for a relationship among quantities. A formula is a type of literal equation. In the formula, D equals R times T. D is isolated. What it means by isolated, D is by itself. You can rearrange a formula to isolate any variable by using your inverse operations. Examples of formula is your formula for circumference and your formula for the area of a triangle. Those are 2 examples of formulas. So in this example, you're going to use the area of a triangle where B is the length of the base and H is the height to solve for H. All right, so H is already in a different color here. So the first thing I am going to get rid of is the fraction. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 2 over 1, and that's going to cancel my fraction. 2 times A is going to give you 2A equal to B times H. Don't stop until H is completely by itself. We get H completely by itself by dividing B on both sides. B cancels. And H is going to equal 2A over B. This formula is the formula for a person's typing speed. So in this formula, they want you to solve for E, which is already in a different color. So what we're going to do first is we're going to get rid of M that's in our denominator. It's being divided, so I am going to need to multiply M on both sides first. And that'll cancel out the denominator. I have M times S equal to what's left, which is W minus 10E. I am then going to keep going until E is by itself. So I would need to get rid of W next. To do that, I would need to subtract W on both sides. W cancels. So what you have is M being multiplied by S, which is just MS. And now we have a minus W, all equal to negative 10E. Last step to get E by itself is to divide negative 10 on both sides. And now we have E is equal to MS minus W all over negative 10. Your turn. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do this one on your own. Then unpause to check your solution. All right, so in this example, we're going to solve for I. So I is here. The only thing preventing I from being by itself is GT. So we can bring over GT as a whole to get I by itself because GT is being subtracted. I am going to add GT to the other side of this equation. And F plus GT is going to equal I. In this example, the formula C equals pi times D gives the circumference of a circle in terms of the diameter. The circumference of a bowl is 18 inches. They want to know what is the bowl's diameter. Okay, so we're going to solve for D first. Okay, so to solve for D, let me draw my line to separate the left and the right side of my equation. D is being multiplied by pi. So to get D by itself, I'm going to divide pi on both sides. Pi cancels. D is going to equal C over pi. The second part, they want to know what is the bowl's diameter. So diameter equals circumference divided by pi, and they want you to leave the pi symbol in your answer. So all that's needed is for you to completely replace C with the circumference that they gave you, which is 18 inches. Over pi, and that's your diameter.